At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And also, don't forget, Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, and I will be back on Tuesday night with the 7:30 live stream discussing the Commanders' 30-23 loss to the Ravens, but also what it means going forward and just kind of taking a look at a few issues around the team. Anyway, you already know what happened. Before I get into my little game recap and or just thoughts on the game, just a couple injury updates for you, or at least what we know right now about John Allen. I did see him in the locker room after the game, big pad taped around his chest and around his pectorals, left pec. Dan Quinn did not have an update, but my understanding is he'll get an MRI on Monday and go from there. And I did briefly ask him how he felt. He said he felt okay. I didn't get the sense that it was anything major, but we will know more on Monday. So I'm not reporting it like that, but that's just the early sense. And we'll know more on Monday after Dan Quinn talks at around 3:30. Dorrance Armstrong left the game with a rib injury, update Monday. And then Javonte Jean-Baptiste, we saw him limping into the locker room after the game, and then I saw him exiting the locker room wearing a walking boot on his right foot. So again, more update on Monday. So let's get to the game. So Ravens win 30-23. You know that. How do you process this one? Because the Ravens are just further along in their development than Washington is. And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for them because the goal is to win every game. I will say, like when Dan Quinn was hired, I remember talking to people that however good they're going to be competitive. And I felt like they were competitive today, which is a good thing. But one thing I also like is they're not sitting there feeling like, hey, the Ravens are really good and we were 7 points away. Nobody's sitting there doing that, nor should they. And that's why I like this team, because they're a competitive team and they have a competitive mindset, and you have a coach who stresses that. But what I like is, you look at the stats. I mean, they were dominated in time of possession. They were dominated in yards. And yet you get one stop, maybe you get the ball back, and then you never know. But what I also like is Dan Quinn acknowledged that. He said it felt lopsided, but yet they were still there. And why is that? Part of it is number 5 on offense. Part of it is they do have a team that competes. And I think that is really good. So that's, and what I like is how they handle these games. After the Buccaneers game, it wasn't anything other than, hey, go back, learn the lessons, correct, move on. Very matter-of-fact approach, and it's a consistent approach, and it's what I like. After the Giants game, it was, okay, you win the game, but that's not good enough. Like that effort wasn't good enough, or not, the execution wasn't good enough because they left way too many points on the field, and in another game, that could have cost them the game. So it's not good enough. So you have to be better. And by the way, I apologize for my scratchy voice. I have a little bit of a cold, but I also have a little bit of got a little bit excited when Lane Thomas hit a grand slam with the Guardians on Saturday. But I also am dealing with a little bit of a cold too. So the combination is kind of leaving me scratchy. So bear with me, and I appreciate you listening to me as I scratch, as I sound like kind of like a record scratching or whatever. Anyway, getting back to this. Like I said, I like that Quinn acknowledged that it did, as lopsided as it felt, they were in the game. But to win those games, you have to be better, whether it's communication and how you're handling coverages, maintaining your leverage, whatever it is. So it's not, it's not like they were accepting like, oh, hey, it's okay, because nobody should do that. And somebody used the word moral victory in a question to Quinn, and nobody was calling it a moral victory. The question was something along the lines, I know you don't consider it that. And he goes, no, it's not. And no, and very few coaches I've been around would do that. I think you run into danger when you do that. And, so I think you find out a lot about these teams of this. And what we found today is, you have to start with the defense. And it wasn't that I don't feel like they were exposed, because I think was the fear. Like, this is what they are on defense. And to me, it highlighted the issues that they have on defense, and it goes to coverage. And, they haven't been able to they've been better. They have been better the last couple weeks, but they didn't face, and, Cleveland's offense is not very good. So it's not the Ravens, and the Cardinals, while they were playing better at the time, it's an up and down team. This is a legitimate offense every single week. And to do that, you have to have something you can take away. And in other games, they could do against the Browns, you could take away the run because they don't run it well. So you can force Deshaun Watson to pass. And the Cardinals, they took the pass away for the most part. They did a really good job there. But they came in today wanting to take away Derrick Henry. So you saw a lot of single high looks. That meant the corners there's going to be more stress on the corners, and they just don't have the corners to hold up in that right now. And you look, I know people get on Benjamin St-Juste, but he's playing up a level. Like, he is being asked to play a certain way when he's not. He's more of a number 2 corner. He's being asked to play like a number 1 corner. This is something they have to put on their offseason wish list. And I know people ask me about the trade deadline and all that. I don't know that there are any corners that are going to be available that are going to come in and provide some level of, improved play. I don't know that yet. I think that's something that we'll all have to look at as it gets closer to the trade deadline. Is there somebody that they could bring in, trade for, or whatever? I don't think they'd make some kind of outlandish trade. It kind of goes against their building process, but I don't know anything for sure at that point, nor do I know who might be available to even contemplate. But the bottom line is, this is what they have. And so when you're going to try and take something away like the run, you better do a good job in the pass. And they forced Lamar Jackson to beat him through the air, and he freaking torched him. And it was the hard part to watch was it was time and time again where these guys were wide open. And sometimes, again, they caught him they'd catch him in a heavy package. Washington would be in their 4-3 base set to match what the Ravens were doing. And next thing you know, Michael Walker's trailing or trying to run after Mark Andrews, who catches one for a 33-yard gain. So you try to take away the run, and they're going to hit you with the pass. And they did a good job of that. There were other times, like, again, St-Juste, you have the other problem here is that one of the guys who's inactive, Emmanuel Forbes. Now, a lot of these issues go back to that failed draft pick. And, this team thought this staff, they knew in the offseason that St-Juste and Forbes would, I don't know about need some work, but I think on film last year, St-Juste did not play well. I think they started to like him more as they got here, and he can, whatever you want to say about him, the guy does compete. And that's, I know you have to be better, but I think there's something that they can build off with him. But he's just in the wrong role for him. And that's not necessarily his fault. It's the fault of the organization prior, right? Because this group just got here. Now, could they have done a better job addressing corner in the offseason? Yes, because Emmanuel Forbes did not put anything on tape last year that was any good. And he did not, I think they were hopeful that through their coaching, through the scheme, that things might grow, and it just hasn't. He didn't, didn't do anything last week. Now he's inactive this week. It's hard to see a future for him here. And because if he was showing anything, if he's showing anything, they get him out there. But that's a pick that miss, not just a miss, but a big miss, because he doesn't help you on special teams. That's why you can't even keep him active, because he doesn't help you on special teams. So it makes it really difficult when you have a backup corner who doesn't play special teams and who hasn't progressed to the point that he needs to. So like that's a pick that continues to hurt them. Mike Sainristil is better suited for the slot, but he's got to play outside because Forbes wasn't there. And then, they brought in Mike Davis, who didn't show that he could play that outside either at the level they need. So it was just, there were some failed draft picks. And then clearly you can say they didn't do enough there because they needed more. And I think I like Sainristil. He had the pick early in the game. but he is, again, better suited inside. But again, he competes. So at least if you're going to have a guy out there, like, I know the guy's going to compete and bust his ass to make this play or to do this. But again, better suited inside. So you have mismatched parts in that secondary that are always going to make it tough. And if you're not being able to stop the run, like against Baltimore, you're going to have a tough day. I also don't think they're going to face many offenses like this, where you have to worry about Derrick Henry's running, Lamar Jackson's running, and then Lamar Jackson hurting you in the air because you're so intent on stopping the run. They tried to make Baltimore one-dimensional in the first half. Derrick Henry had 9 carries for 38 yards, but Lamar threw for over 200. So they just, and he was very accurate on third downs. And again, these guys were way too wide open. And sometimes it was there was one time it was a kind of, I guess, a play design maybe, or maybe just more through alignment. They have Mark Andrews in the backfield. He circles around to the left, comes out, and you got Frankie Louvu and Percy Butler cover him. Nobody's covering in the middle of the zone, and it's wide open for, I don't know if it was Bateman or Flowers, but I think it was Bateman for 25-yard gain. So that kept happening. They had a touchdown to Mark Andrews, and it looks like the safety's got to squeeze more because Quan Martin, and on that side it would have been Percy Butler, but Quan Martin's running off to the corner to help cover Isaiah Likely. And, so that leaves it open. There's nobody on the backside. Is he supposed to get over it? Regardless, somebody messes up there because Mark Andrews wide open. That happened time again. Then you get some man coverage. You had Samra still trying to cover sometimes on a crossing route to Flowers, but you run into some traffic and he starts to go under, then he decides to go or starts to go around, then he goes underneath the others and it just puts him behind and it's a big gain. Those things kept happening. St. Jude's with the pass interference. I didn't particularly like that pass interference call late. I kind of felt like the receiver had lost his balance. Bottom line is they called him. But that stuff kept happening. Like they just don't have that guy at corner that can just lock someone down. And I don't know, what they're going to have to do about it. Or do you just chalk it up and say, like, you're not going to face an offense like that? So can you make another team more one-dimensional? Because again, if you can now get more in coverage, more two deep looks, now you're better off in preventing some of those plays, which they did for a couple weeks. But man, that's, so like to me, that's why I say I don't feel like they were exposed necessarily as much as it continues to highlight an area of concern and where this team is going. Because you look at this offense and this offense can do things, but what can you do as a team without unless the defense improves and gets consistent with it? And I don't want to you don't want to destroy them after the one game because they did play better the last 2 weeks. And what do they do coming up? Because the Carolina, and then they have the Bears offense really playing well. So can you be more consistent and be able to take something away from the offense and then not get stung the way you did today? I don't know if that's going to be the case. And like I said, part of it goes back to with Forbes and that pick. And it was just a failed pick, and it really haunts them right now. And again, not this group, but it does haunt them because it's really hard to miss on a guy like that. And they did.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
One thing you didn't feel today was the presence of Frankie Louvu. Only had one tackle, I believe. That was an unusual game for him. Last week, very loud. Today, not quite as loud. And some of this stuff you want to go back and watch, see what happened here, what happened here. But it was just with the coverage, it was all of it. And I just think that is going to be something they have to contend with all year, especially against teams that pass pretty well and have that ability to really kind of cause problems for you. So, that's where we're at with that defense. they struggle to play press man. They were struggling in zone today. And if that doesn't, the one thing, like I said, the one thing I like about this team is they all talk about lessons learned. And Dan Quinn is very big about that. Like, hey, there are lessons to be learned. You need to learn them and then you apply them. And if you do that, you'll get better. And I like the matter of fact approach. I think that will help. But there's only so much you can do if they don't, if the guys doing it maybe aren't capable of doing all that you need them to do at the level that you need them to do it at. The good thing for them is they did get the interception. I remember talking before this in the podcast on Saturday that I felt like there'd be chances with Lamar because he doesn't throw an always inaccurate pass. And on that first drive, he throws wide, ball's tipped. You saw that happen a few times against Cincinnati last week with the Ravens, and balls tipped, and Bengals just weren't around the ball. Samuel's around the ball, picks it off, gets them off to a good start. So that was a good sign. That's the first interception they've had this year. Like that's something that this defense just hasn't caused enough problems for the offense taking the ball away. And that's something that they're going to have to really try to get better. So, we'll see on where that goes. But again, I don't think they're going to face more challenging offenses than what they faced today. One thing that Dante Fowler did have 2 sacks, active game for him. So that was good for them to see. And I think the other concern is what happens with this D-line, because those are all the guys I mentioned who are hurt were all D linemen. Like they don't have enough depth there to withstand a lot of losses there. So, and they got F.A. Obata back. Jamin Davis, another draft pick that is no longer, another former first, not just a draft pick, like Forbes, a first-round pick, who is not helping them. Like, look at these picks that they've had. Jahan Dotson shipped to Philly. Jamin Davis converted to DN, not playing. And then Emmanuel Forbes, inactive, just like Jamin Davis. So not getting anything from those picks is hurting this defense. And Dotson, I know, is an offense, but those two in particular, it's really hard to not get contributions from high picks, regardless of who drafted them. Like those picks are not helping this team at all. But I think the other thing is, again, Baltimore's further along in their development, but as Zach Ertz said, they're only in their sixth game together. So that matters, but I don't think he said it as an excuse as much as a reality check here, fellas. Like, this is where the veteran leadership comes in. Don't put too much stock in one win or a loss. Remember, this is a growing situation, so keep building because it's only been 6 games. And if you keep that in mind, I think you're in better shape. If you remember, to me, one of the things I'm going to talk about Jayden Daniels in a minute because I thought he was really good. And there's some plays I absolutely want to highlight. So stick around for that, please, because he was good. But one thing I'll say too is I like the maturity of this team will be tested again this week. And that's why while this could be considered quote unquote a measuring stick, I think what we saw is that the defense has to get better. And I think the offense can hang. But I think instead of a measuring stick, because to me, the Carolina game is every bit a measuring stick as this game was, because if you don't go out and handle your business, you have a chance to get to 5-2 at home. If you don't do it, now you're 4-3, then you have the Bears coming in. And then this really good start is for naught. So you've got to go handle your business. So this is where you really see. And that's why, to me, the Cleveland game was every bit a measuring stick as this game was. Now it's in different ways. Like the Ravens are a Super Bowl contender. Right now, I'd say Washington is a contender to win the NFC East, a legit contender to win the NFC East. Baltimore is right now at a different level, and that's okay. But I think one thing that I would say too is you look back to last year. You remember they had that game in Philly that they lost, but it was a really good game, a really good offense. You're like, oh wow, it's a loss, but it was a really good game by them. And so you say, okay, what kind of team are they? And 4 days later, they got their butt kicked by the Bears. So you learned right away, nothing had changed. I think that was the game that people just I know that players felt like it's not changing. And that was a wrap. I think that Bears game as much as anything, but the point is it was coming off quote unquote a good loss and they did nothing to build on. I think they assumed some things. I don't think this group will do that. I think they're really good at staying focused on daily prep, et cetera. So that would be, to me, is a good thing for them, for sure. On offense, no Brian Robinson. I still felt like they would be able to move the ball, and they did, because I didn't think that they were going to be able to run the ball that well, and they did not. But this was a Jaden Daniels game, and he's special, folks. So he's going to be special. So another thing you can take away from this game is, again, it's a sixth game in a row where you can say, hey, you got your quarterback, because you do. And what I like is the development of his passing game and just the connection with guys like Terry McLaurin. I mean, he does a good job of finding guys. And I like that. Now, it's funny because we always talk about, keeping his eyes upfield. And he had the pass to Noah Brown where he's keeping his eyes upfield. He just sailed the ball on that one. It was almost picked. It was dropped, but it was what I liked on the play. Everything up to the throw was good. Scramble out of there, looking downfield, eyes up. You got Noah Brown. He just made a bad throw. That's fine. I liked everything about that up until the throw, or just the errant throw, but it was good. So you continue to see something with him every single week. And listen, Lamar Jackson after the game called him amazing, said he deserves the hype. I had my reporter, Jamison Hensley, who I had on the podcast the other day. He said, listen, Ravens played C.J. Stroud early in his development last year. He was with Houston. He's he thought Jaden was better, so that he heard him more. And, so there are a lot of good things with that. And you build on that. There is no doubt that these players feel like, as long with him out there, that they're always in it. And you just improve a little bit as a defense, maybe get another takeaway as a defense, and you have now a greater chance to win because number 5 is going to get it done for you. What I like is that, the Ravens take a lead, he goes down and answers. They go down and score before half. He takes them down, gets them at least in the field goal range, a kick is blocked. Then come out of halftime, another field goal. So there are some things that you can get a little bit better at with that. And they really didn't have a great threat of the run game without Robinson in there. And he was going to be the main attack, and he still hurt the Ravens. So let's take a look at some of the 2 touchdown passes to McLaurin. I think highlight a lot of the growth and the connection that is developing with he and McLaurin. So we're going to start with the second touchdown first, because I think that really speaks volumes about it. So on the play, they know that, in the huddle, he knows where it's going, right? And one thing to note before I get to that, one thing with these receivers that they know is that if they have a one-on-one to the boundary side, that Jaden Daniels is going to look for them and trust them to win. And he's always going to be aggressive trying to get the ball to you in that situation. And they love that. They love playing with a quarterback who does that. But anyways, on the touchdown pass, you have McLaurin on the left side. They know he's going down there. You get man coverage. Man coverage at the goal line with McLaurin, you got to go to him. And that's what I think. And I told you about that in my 5 things I think on Saturday, that one of the lessons from last week was exactly that. You had the interception to Zach Ertz, but you had McLaurin one-on-one and man coverage on the other side. You go to him. So today he's going to go to him, right? So he asked him in the huddle, what route do you like? And McLaurin's like, the slant. Said, but if he's playing inside leverage, I may have to change, or so that's what happened. Cornerback plays inside leverage. So McLaurin reads it. So does Daniels, and that's key. So McLaurin goes and fakes, plants hard on the slant, and that's where you see the pump fake. And then you see then he throws then he's going to run the fade, and Jaden throws the back shoulder pass, perfect pass, touchdown, and 4th down. But the key is there that he reads McLaurin's body language, he reads the leverage the same way, and he makes the perfect throw. That is growth. And McLaurin said told me after the game, he's developed as quick a connection with Daniels as any quarterback he's ever had. Now, I kind of joked to him, I don't think you had it late in the seasons either with some of these guys. Now, he kind of did with Heineke, more consistently, but he's absolutely there with Daniels. He's already got 4 touchdown catches. That's more than matches what he had last year. So, but that reading the body language and that little sequence there was a big deal for those 2. And then even on the first one, the first touchdown pass, so he's looking, I think, in the right flat for Zacchaeus, man coverage, but they got some zone on the other side. So McLaurin's running across the field. And what he notices too is he could have kept running to the corner, but he's afraid that you're going to take someone back there. So he throttles it down. But Daniels reads it as well the same way, and just a nice throw to him. So it was a good connection between the 2 that continues to grow. And it's not just with him. You see it developing with Noah Brown as well. I mean, you see it with, Zach Ertz. I mean, all these guys, like they have a good connection, but Daniels really trusts them. And I think it's just a good sign of the growth and where he is going. And it's, again, I told you the other day, it's why they're so excited about him. And even there was a stop route that McLaurin ran. They said there was no separate. He said, I didn't do a good job getting separation, but he threw it to the perfect spot, to the low, to the outside, gave him a chance. Defensive back doesn't have a chance. And that's where you see, when you talk about accuracy, ball placement, that's it. And so so the takeaway from this game is, again, defense has work to do. We knew that. Daniels, special player. And I think now you know who else knows that? Baltimore. So here's what Roquan Smith said. Washington is in good hands with Daniels. The guy is the truth. That's Roquan Smith. Austin Eckler said he plays to his capabilities. He's a stud. So I think like this is what others are seeing. And I think it's why, despite the loss, you can feel pretty good, not about the loss, but about the direction because of him, and that he covers up a lot of sins, right? And, there's always mistakes, and there were, we'll get into that more for Tuesday morning and after watching the game again. But I think it's just, I think that's where this team is at. Like, defense still being built. They don't have a young Jaden Daniels on that side of the ball. Offense in really, really good hands. And there's a lot they can do. Like, I really like a couple of the play designs. I mean, shoot, they ran a flea flicker screen to Austin Eckler for a big gain. That was golden. Like, you watch that and you see where the defenders are lined up. They got 4 guys deep and they cleared it out, and you get a little screen to Eckler for a long gain. That's beautiful. Even like an 11-yard pass to De'Ami Brown. Here's what I love about that play. If you remember that little tunnel screen in the red zone, that on the play, you have Eckler in the backfield. Well, he runs out as if he's running a bubble. You know what happens? 2 guys are going with him. Well, that opens up the screen for De'Ami Brown. Really, really good play design. I really like that. There is an element of creativity in this offense that Cliff Kingsbury, I think, has brought, and it's been fun to watch, and the way they can use guys and how differently they will use them. I mean, it's been a lot. I think even Eckler said after the game, like, he hasn't been involved in a flea flicker like that. So who has? Like, I haven't seen one like that before, but it was really, really good because it definitely caught them. And I think the more you see that, the more other teams have to look for things. And the good thing with this offense is how much it can evolve because of Daniels and his growth and his ability to run and do things and all that. And the nice thing, I think, for Washington is that Daniels wasn't really necessarily making huge plays with his legs only. He was doing a lot with his arm. And that's why I say, like, one of the differences between he and other I'll be honest, like, the whole Griffin comparison to me was never a thing, is that he's going to hurt you as much. With Jaden Daniels can hurt you more passing from the pocket, period. And I think that's why I think you should be really, really excited. I think you are about his growth. So anyways, that's it from me. My voice is starting to go even more now. So I apologize if you've made it this far, then JP Finley owes you a beer. And I appreciate you sticking with me despite me sounding like froggy, a little bit froggy here. So anyway, appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back on Tuesday morning with the game recap and just kind of going over a few things and finding out what happened. And then Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. Join us for the live stream. Appreciate it. We're tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.